Hey, welcome to Tales from the Troll Hole. I'm your host, Cecil B., and together we're going to dive deep into the internet and find what stories there are to be read, enjoyed, laughed at, cried with, you name it. Thanks for coming along on this journey with me. Now grab your torch and pitchfork. Let's dive into this troll hole. All right, this is it. This is the first episode of Tales from the Troll Hole, and I figured that we would go with first day at work stories for today, since it's the first day of the podcast, and hopefully this will, turn out to be a full-time job for me. So I'm looking at this as like the first day on the job. First up, we have a story from Reddit from a user named Surly Jason. I was a supervisor in a technical support department for professional support, but was one day unceremoniously moved to personal support. The former was expensive and for IT and experienced clients, the latter for regular home users. When I arrived in my department, they were short 3 supervisors, so I was assigned all 3 teams. Oh my God. And the place was like Lord of the Flies. I was given a printout of schedules and names with no way to find the people. I started tracking them down to find that nearly 1/3 of them had left the company, but previous supervisors didn't notify HR/payroll. There were no files on what people were trained on. Nothing. End of the day, my new boss asked how things were, and I told him people needed to be fired. He laughed and said, "We're understaffed already." I replied, "No, I mean the other supervisors who aren't doing any job I can identify, and you for letting it go on like this." Things with him were a bit touchy after that. The techs were paid hourly, so since they weren't clocking in, they weren't getting paid. But they were still in systems for payroll taxes and PTO and stuff. The worst part is we were supposed to have a queue time of about 18 minutes, but when I got there, it was usually hours long because the scheduling was still counting on those people being there. Over the first few days, I located my team and I found one guy who was clocking in but wasn't on his assigned phone extension. Sometimes it happened that a person would get a new extension, something broke and the telephone guys didn't fix it, so they just got a new one, and I figured that was the case. I would email him and get nothing, and after a couple more days without response, I found a way to put an alert on the time clock, so when he clocked in, the computer would squawk, and I sat nearby. Ooh, this is good, like laying a trap. When I heard the alert, I popped up to see the kid at the computer. I introduced myself and asked why he didn't come to see me. He quickly confessed that he didn't stay. He would come in, clock in, then go home and return to clock out. He said he'd never been trained, so there was no point in staying. Oh my God. Though I didn't have the authority to do so, I fired him on the spot and called HR to tell them. When the woman from HR came down, we needed to sort out how long he'd been getting paid and not working. While sorting it at my desk, I was upset with the whole situation and had to fight back my tears, and the HR rep hugged me right as my boss came around the corner. This era was so stressful, I took to journaling to process it so I remember it well. Stories from this time may be my memoirs. For my first couple of weeks, my boss would come to tell me about employees who came to him and asked to be moved off my team, but there was nowhere for them to go unless they wanted to work swing or night shifts. After a couple weeks and stuff started to settle, I started doing regular supervisor things like training and call evaluations. We would monitor a call from our desk, but with new people, I like to sit by them and jack in beside them more like a coach. And soon I started getting some requests to move to my team. I fought with other managers, I built automation, and things improved, but none so much as when they merged the professional and personal support groups. The injection of a lot more competence streamlined a lot of things, and stuff worked well until we were all laid off and our jobs sent offshore. Oh my God. I can't even imagine. You do all of this work to pick up the pieces from people that were just doing Lord knows what, just destroying everything, and you step in and put out all these fires and build a new structure, and then it's ripped out from under you. That is so frustrating. I can't even imagine. to have somebody that was just like on the clock and would just go home, I mean, that is a bold move. Apparently, in the comments, I'm seeing that the company did sue to get that money back. I don't know what the result of it was, but I mean, that had to have been a deposition for the ages. I wonder how long he was getting away with that, too. I mean, it had to be long enough to where it was worth it to go to court to get the money back. Oh, man, that's absolutely insane. Great story, Surly Jason. Thanks for that. Thank you. And I hope you found a job that doesn't suck. Our next story regarding a first day of work is from Lilu, also from Reddit. Dairy Queen when I was 17. The layout was such that I had to repeatedly walk past the grill where the floor was so covered in grease that it was like trying to walk across oiled ice. Super dangerous because if you slipped, you were likely to hit the grill. Oh my God. I got yelled at for mentioning that the floor needed to be cleaned. I even offered to do it, but still was told no. I was scheduled for an 8-hour shift, so by law, I got a 20-minute unpaid lunch break, which I was made to take about 45 minutes into my shift. I got yelled at for asking if I could please take my break closer to the middle of my shift. Oh boy. I was left alone as the only cashier and ice cream preparer, even though I hadn't even been told what everything on the menu was yet, let alone how to make it. I kept getting yelled at for not knowing when I went to the back past the slip and slide of death to ask for help. About 3 hours in, I was absolutely certain this would be a horrible place to work, so I told the owner that it was dangerous here. I was being yelled at by the manager for not knowing how to make things that I had never even heard of, and the job was a bad fit for me, so I was quitting and leaving. He told me it was unacceptable that I wasn't giving 2 weeks' notice and yelled at me until I cried. Oh my God, it's been over 20 years, and I've never set foot in a Dairy Queen again. I've had some fast food jobs, and that is pretty par for the course, unfortunately, in a lot of these companies. They just need somebody there just to say that they have enough people on the floor. And if you are, quote unquote, strong enough to stick around, then they're happy with it. But they try to play it off like you're weak if you demand to be treated decently. It's really weird. Yeah, it's almost like a point of pride if people are like, oh yeah, I don't need my breaks. I never take my breaks. I don't have to do that. Oh yeah, I've been hurt a lot of times. I've been in very dangerous situations. I've been sliced and burned and all kinds of stuff. It's like a point of pride. Like, why? Good for you for standing up for yourself and getting out of there, Lilu. Good for you. Great story. Up next, we have a short story by Womp1970, also from Reddit. True story, I got mugged on my first night as a pizza delivery guy. Holy smokes. It was my second delivery of the night. I parked the car and had to walk a little bit to get to the apartment building. During that walk, 2 guys came up, hit me in the head several times, shoved me down, and took the money bag and the pizza and ran. I went back to the pizza shop and quit on the spot. The pizza shop owner sent me to the emergency room to get checked out. They paid for the bill and made sure I got home safe and sound. So they were great. Oh, wow. That's incredible. It's nice that they did the right thing and tried to help you. Damn. I think they need to stop having delivery people carry cash. Like, that's insane. And that could have ended, like, so much worse, too. Holy smokes. I'm so glad you were okay. Our next story is from The Real Brad Goodman on Reddit. This wasn't a bad first day, but sure was funny. New job site, building a rest stop for Parks Canada. My boss and I are just surveying the site when he slips on a slope and slides down into a bog. He's down there on all fours, soaking wet and muddy, and I don't want to help in case I fall in too. Oh boy. Searching for something to say, I muster out, "Oh, did you mean to do that?" He replies, "Of course I didn't fucking mean to do that, god damn it." He crawls out and says, "Well, I've had enough for today. How about you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we can call it a day." We drove 3 hours to have a look at the site for 10 minutes and 3 hours back home. The ride was pretty quiet when he says, "Did you fucking mean to do that, you fucking guy?" We don't work together anymore, but he was an absolute gem of a guy, and I still consider him a friend. That's really nice. What a fun story. I'm going to be honest, I would really have a hard time not laughing. Like, I think I probably would have been fired because I would have been in stitches watching somebody flounder about in the mud at a job site. Like, that's So funny. Especially in a bog. I'm picturing the ocean spray cranberry bogs, you know? There's just like people in waders watching nearby being like, who the fuck is that? Our next story is a short one from Irma Quills. I worked in a Kmart, and the first day I saw a bulletin regarding a secret shopper who approached an associate stocking shelves and asked for assistance. He told her to fuck off. Yeah, I realized that morale at that store was non existent. That is like cathartic to read. Anybody who's worked in retail knows the feeling of like, yeah, it would be mean to say, but you just want to say it at least once. So relatable, Irma Quills. Thank you for that. Our next story is from user Squirrels Are Jerks. Decades ago, I rolled into California penniless and in need. I applied many places, including the local McDonald's, as I needed money immediately. While at the interview, the manager said they didn't hire guys with long hair. Being a guy with long hair, I told him I understood his position, thanked him for his time, and excused myself so he could get back to it. About a week later, I get a call from him telling me they'd look past it and would like to hire me. Great! I get to eat again. Trouble is, I didn't have any razors. All I had was this clipper that gets pretty close, slightly more than stubble, but definitely not beard hair. I show up, the owner is there. I have met some pricks in my life, but this guy deserves whatever stroke he gets. He sees me coming up from the underground freezer. Some McDonald's keep them underground. It's a goddamn liability, but what you gonna do? And just lights me the fuck up about everything. He's literally screaming at me on my first day about very light peach fuzz on my face, saying that I asked them to make an exception for my long hair, and now this. I asked for no exceptions. I excused myself. They called me. I tried to explain my circumstances to him, that I literally have nothing in the world, and in front of everyone he shoves a $20 bill at me and says to go next door and get a razor. The manager, meanwhile, who previously had been personable and nice, was suddenly taking this fatherly tone with me, saying things like, look, I can't hold your hand, you have to do the hard work. I did dick for work in that store from that day on. He would yell at the elderly cashiers up front, in front of customers. He never mailed me my taxes. Well, if you would send the money, I'll send you the forms. So I sicked the IRS on him. Oh my God. I hope they buried his ass. Probably not, but I'll take any catharsis I can. 20 fucking years later, and I still hate that piece of shit. I hope if he still lives, he's in tremendous pain. Oh my God. That's wild. Once again, that's just the fast food industry for you, and anybody out there who's been mean to a fast food person, this is what we deal with on our side of it. And so when we get it from the other side too, it's miserable. It's torture, day in, day out. And I always love the excuse of like, well, why don't you go to college and get it? A lot of us are going to college while we do this. So it's kind of like a moot point. And also college doesn't always equal success, right? Anyway, thank you, Squirrels Are Jerks. That was a really horrific story, actually. I hope you ended up with a really awesome job and that you're doing great. Our next story comes to us from Agile AD 7186. I unknowingly took a dump next to my boss. We both had pretty nasty shits, and when we were out of the stalls, things were awkward for a bit. We now laugh about it every now and then. Man, this is why any place that I work has to have individual, like, solo bathrooms. You know what I mean? I can't handle the stall situation. Like, if someone's in there, I'm just gonna wait till my next break. You know what I mean? But good for you, Agile AD 7186. If you can laugh at it now, I think that's really cool. You must have a really nice work environment. So I'm happy for you and those nasty shits that you had. Great job. We're going to keep it short and sweet for this first episode. So that's all the first day of work stories that I have for you this time. But here's a little bit of what to expect coming up on Tales from the Troll Hole. I'm going to be reading you stories from Reddit. I'm going to be reading stories that you all send in to me. I'll tell you how at the end of the show here. And I'm also going to have guests on sometimes, and then we're going to create some stories as well. And peppered in there will be stories from my own life. Thank you so much for listening to our first episode here. I'm going to try to release one every week, and I am so happy to take this journey down the troll hole with you. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Tales from the Troll Hole. I'm your host, Cecil B., and this show is produced by me. Our theme song is by Vervex. They're a great band. You should give them a listen. You can stream them anywhere. They're also on TikTok and Instagram. Remember to subscribe so that you don't miss out on a single episode. And also find us on Instagram, and then you can send in your own stories. I just ask that they're true and that they're not going to scar somebody for life. You know what I mean? Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.